The lake. I went camping with my family a few years ago, and we haven't been back to the lake since the incident. The lake almost took my sister. It happened when I was in middle school, the summer of 7th grade going to 8th grade. My sister had just turned 16, and since we've always been an outdoor family, we took my sister to the lake for a camping trip for her birthday. I remember we arrived at the campgrounds and set up our tent. The smell of the charcoal and the taste of the hot dogs brings me back. We got into the family boat and set out onto the lake. Mom and Dad told us to always wear life jackets when we went swimming. My sister worked as a lifeguard, but they didn't care. They still requested that she wore a life jacket. I had no problem wearing it because I had a fear of drowning. Once my sister and I got into the water, she swam out farther and I followed close behind. Our parents were still on the boat, drinking and laughing. Their marriage was going on for 20 years that year. Everyone thought it was the cutest thing ever. When we were out far enough from the boat, my sister took off her life jacket. She was always a risk taker like that. I recall her encouraging me to take mine off too, but I wasn't okay with it. Eventually, she stopped haggling me. I leaned back and just took in the sun while floating on the steady waters of the lake. I jolted up when I felt water splash in my face. I looked around for her, and she was nowhere to be found. I screamed for her, and still no answer. I ducked into the water and saw her fighting and trying to swim her way up. I reached out my hand, and she tried grabbing it. She missed the first time. The second time she reached out, my life jacket yanked me back up, but I was able to bring it back down just quick enough to grab her hand as she reached out to grab mine. She screamed, "Swim!" the moment she surfaced and caught her breath. We swam as fast as we could to the boat and got onto it with the help of Mom and Dad. She was crying and we were finally able to calm her down. We asked her what happened, and she said that while trying to relax, something or someone grabbed her ankle and pulled her down. We asked her if it was seaweed or something like that. She screamed at us to look at her ankle. There was a large handprint wrapped around her ankle, and it was swollen and discolored, a bruise almost, like something from the lake didn't want to let her go. We reported the incident to the police, and they just looked at us like we were crazy. They told us they were going to look into it, but by the way they were looking at us, I don't think they ever intended to. We never went back to the lake or camping ever again. The Hag. In my village, there's a woman who never left her house. I have never seen her in person, but I've heard many stories of her when I was young. I don't know if she's still alive, but my fear towards her is still as vivid as ever. My grandmother used to tell me she was a witch, that many people would visit her to help them with their family issues, or to beg for something to make the man or woman they love reciprocate the feelings. Grandmother would also tell me that the witch would come take the kids who didn't listen to their parents. I was always terrified of that. I always listened to my mom, but until I was about 13, I stopped listening to her. I remember telling my friends about the woman my grandmother told me about. All they did was laugh in my face, telling me that the stories were just things that were used to keep the kids in line. They also told me I was a baby for believing the stories still. One day after school, my friend told me his family was going to be out of town, and he was going to invite everyone over and party the night away. He said I was going to be the school loser if I did not attend. The thought ran through my mind the whole time at school. I went home and asked my parents about going, and immediately my mother said, without any hesitation, no. I was flabbergasted and a little hurt. I thought I was a good kid, and I didn't understand why she didn't want me to go. I questioned her, and she told me. My friend was not a good friend. and that it was a bad thing to hold a party with so many young friends without letting the adults know or anything. She was adamant about the decision. Later that night, I snuck out of my window and headed towards my friend's house anyway. I didn't care what my mom said. I was not going to become the school loser. I arrived at the house and everyone was already there. My friend greeted me and told me that I was a badass for sneaking out. After a few hours of hanging out and partying, I decided I wanted to go home. I was tired and all partied out. I said goodbye to my friends and started on my way home. On the way home, I saw someone looking at me through an old window of a shop. I brushed it off because the shop was closed for the night, and maybe someone was staying there to make sure there were no break-ins. I arrived in my neighborhood and got this eerie feeling. I felt like someone was watching me, like I was being followed. I don't know who or what it was, but I hated the feeling. It made a sick feeling in my stomach. I wanted to vomit. I saw my house in the distance and I began running towards it. While running, I heard footsteps running behind me. It was so terrifying, I ran into my house, slamming the door behind me. My mother came running out of her room, with my father not too far behind with his knife. I had a long talk with them. More like they were having a long talk with me. I just sat there in my room listening to them as they scolded me about sneaking out of the house. After they told me I was no longer able to see my friends, they went back to their room. I lay there on my bed, in the dark, thinking about my grandmother's story and how much it used to scare me when I was a child. I remember hearing tapping at my window and seeing a silhouette of a woman standing outside. I'm now 30 years old with a family of my own, and I'm still terrified of her.